Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Chance Paladin Reads His Books to You. This is book number 11. This is the title is Nines and Drone Girl, and nothing in this book should be legal, medical, dental, vision, or legal advice. And read responsibly, and then don't forget to share it with somebody. All rights reserved. No portion of this book may be reproduced in any form without permission from the author except as permitted by U.S. copyright law. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living and dead, actual events are purely coincidental. Content advisory as follows. I write post-apocalyptic stories, therefore portions of these stories are intended for mature audiences. There's about as much romance as you would expect in a typical post-apocalyptic scenario. Explicit sexual acts were included or germane to the story and not intended to be gratuitous or fetishized. There isn't any really hard swearing worse than what you hear on cable. There's a moderate range of violence as would be expected in a post-apocalyptic story. However, the suffering aspects are not deliberately glamorized or embellished upon. Read at your own risk. Forward. How do you get people to defend their homes from marauders post-collapse when they wouldn't even protect them before from everyday common criminals? The answer is you don't. All these gated communities and subdivisions guarded by concrete walls and rented observe and report security aren't stopping a group of 3 to 5 bad guys now. What chance do they have against 25, 50, 100 when there's no 911 and no insurance policy? The answer is 0. For those who'd already lost everything, it was business as usual. For those who have not yet to know what loss was, it was the end of the world. Chapter 1. Fun and Games. Class Stronghold 3 years and 3 months after the collapse, late spring. One of the kids had been playing with the drone on the playground to observe the other kids playing. Their parent had found it in a scavenging run with a bunch of spare parts, and the battery still ended up holding a charge, so the kids got to play with it. It was time to come in, though, and everyone decided they wanted to hear a drone story. And the kid with the drone noted that he was watching everyone playing, and that there would be no way for the people outside the play equipment to get on the inside if the people didn't want to let them in. I was feeling particularly good not having to change the stupid clock for daylight savings anymore, and decided to tell them a special story I had been saving. The story of Nines. Outskirts of the city. Day before the collapse. Winter. Chapter 2. Reading is fun. Library. A young woman liked to sit in her library and read books all day. She was the head librarian at the library, but you would never know it. There were administrative interns that handled the daily routine, and she had more important tasks. Her job was to know where all of the books were and what was in every single book. It was because of this that she gained a moderate level of knowledge of practically everything there was to know. She couldn't recall much of it, of course, but it was enough to get people pointed in the general direction. The knowledge also helped her know which new books they needed in order to fill gaps in the knowledge base. Because of this, they ended up having one of the most extensive libraries in the entire area. This helped them get more funding to order more books and expand and get more funding, which brought in more people, and the library was doing very well. Because of this, they ended up having one of the most extensive libraries in the entire area. This helped them get more funding to order more books, then expand and get more funding, which brought in more people, and the library was doing very well. Apologize if I just read that. Anyway. The library could stay open as long as everyone wore masks, and the surfaces were cleaned every few hours, so it was fine in business. It was business as usual. She spent so much time at the library, she eventually made a private lounge for the staff. It had a fridge and a pantry, which she kept well stocked. She had the facility zoned for a sink, too, and had a little 2-burner stove that ran off an internal propane tank and vents that went outside, along with everything else. That way nobody ever smelled that they had a private kitchen. She had a microwave too, and it had a big "no fish" sign on it. The stove was propane, because their electricity had been cut off in the past for a billing discrepancy between the provider and all the grants that were supposed to pay for those sorts of things. They had to check books in and out by hand for a few days, and nobody was able to heat up their food, so when the library got its expansion, she had a propane stove put in. Once upon a time, several months prior. The young librarian had been doing her normal work when some punks had come into the library. Apparently they had nothing else to do and were being very loud. Being the responsible party at the library, the head librarian was expected to maintain the peace in a building that was supposed to be neutral of politics and free of violence. She knew from prior experience at home and on the news that sometimes calling law enforcement escalated things further than they needed to be. She wasn't scared of these punks, nor was she intimidated. She put on her big girl confidence and walked to the punks who were being loud and rude. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you all to leave. You're disturbing the library." She waved her arms around, as if the hooligans couldn't appreciate all of the people quietly and respectfully working. There were people around the library trying to study for exams and having family time. She pointed to the signs, saying that she can ask anyone to leave for any reason, which was directly next to the signs referencing respectfulness and being courteous, etc. The punks laughed at her and showed rudimentary weapons of their own and demanded to know where all the racist books were at. Having metal detectors at this point would have been pointless, so she appreciated saving the money on them. Anyone who was bad was obviously going to come through anyway, and without a way to enforce detection, it was useless. "We're going to take those racist books and burn them." "I'm sorry," the librarian declared. "There is no such thing as a racist book. You need to leave." The punks laughed at her, and she suddenly felt very small. At the same time, a man stood up and positioned himself behind her. Feeling the shadow behind her, and regardless of her physical inferiority, she maintained her icy stare forward. "You want them to leave, ma'am?" The voice came from behind. She replied with the sound of almost grim pity for herself in the situation. "They're not welcome here." An increased threat of force escalated in the voice behind her. "Boys, you heard the lady." He was clearly angry at the situation. These boys had put the librarian in. She heard a shuffle of clothing behind her and saw the punk's eyes get wide. They left in a hurry. The men gracefully walked around the librarian and got up to the window. He made sure they didn't attack any of the cars, and also to see what car they left in. "Hopefully they won't be back," the man said solidly. She pointed up. "Got them on camera. I'll post it online so everybody knows." The man thought and responded as he got to the window and looked out. "If you must." She thought about it and realized the man must have flashed a gun at them. She weighed her options of asking the man to leave and then realized out of all of her signs, she didn't have one saying no guns. She didn't have the sign because she had police officers come in here sometimes to do research or take their kids, and she knew from reading that good guys with guns outweighed the bad guys by a huge amount. Otherwise, there'd be shootings all the time. And there wasn't. Plus, as she reminded herself, the bad guys ignore signs anyway. Not wanting to post anything of the man with the gun and realized the punks would be encouraged to return and pay her a visit anyway if the video went viral, she kept it quiet. She had plans of her own. The librarian did look around for a second, though, to make sure nobody was filming on their cell phones. Nobody was. There was, after all, a no cell phones sign posted, and everyone respected it. The two parted ways, neither being able to officially thank the other for their actions. It wasn't protocol after all. The two nodded at each other, and that was it. The man left, texting something on his phone. The librarian took the cue and headed to a section of the library that explained different ammunition sizes. Then she grabbed a few of the latest magazines that illustrated women defending themselves fiercely. She remembered to check on her staff, and they all seemed fine and went back to what they were doing. The librarian took her women's self-defense magazines off the magazine shelf, and then went and found some books explaining calibers. Pistol calibers? And went to her private study to blend back in. She had some serious work to do. In the coming weeks, she settled on the 9mm cartridge due to the improved technology of the round and the benefits of a shared caliber across several handguns. She had been saving up her funds for a long time, having nothing to spend it on due to the funding at the library paying for nearly all of her needs. She had a little pocket pistol in her favorite color. It could hold 7+1, which wasn't amazing, but was still a lot for the tiny package. It had some 9-round extended factory mags that she'd purchased separately. They worked well enough, but the fit wasn't perfect and made the firearm slightly less concealable, so she kept those as backups. The added bonus was she could conceal it nearly anywhere and no one would know. She also had the guy at the gun shop switch out the trigger guard with an integrated laser pointer that made it amazingly accurate and able to get sight acquisition in close quarters. For her off-body carry gun, she got a full-size double-stack 9mm that fit her hand really well. It had a low-bore axis which made it aim naturally and held over double the ammunition of her subcompact. She was always carrying a backpack with some books on her, so she ordered online a new book bag that had a concealed compartment where her pistol could fit. The librarian, now taking an expressed interest in defending herself and her hoard of books, ordered private lessons for herself at the local indoor range. She was able to take advantage of a discount where they trained the ladies at a reduced cost to encourage them defending themselves from idiots. Most upstanding guys, after all, wouldn't miss a few less dirtbags not taking up tax dollars anymore if they were going to molest the ladies. Nobody would miss them, actually, if they were going to infringe on people's rights to be left alone. That was on them, not on society.